All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Evening, ladies and gentlemen. I got to get used to saying that. I just said that's a little tough for me. Good evening. Sounds strange. But welcome to the Free American Phoenix evening show. My co-host is Russell Pappalardo, the mighty Phoenix, and I am Clay Douglas. Hello, Russell. I'm doing pretty good, but I got to do something here. I'm recording this, and I would like to thank you, darling. I would like to get your voice on there too, but I don't know if I can do that. Maybe next time. Maybe next day. But Russell, Bibi Netanyahu just made an appearance in front of our Congress, and he had the guts. I got a picture here, him holding up the Baphomet, the five-pointed star with the devil's head inside it. He's holding up that right in front of our Congress. It's like Bibi shows Congress the real commander-in-chief. I'm from Texas. I'm from Texas. It's Baphomet to me. Interesting. Okay. All right. You know, hold on just a second. I want to get this recorded. This conversation is already more interesting. I want to get it up on YouTube. So if you'll bear with me for just a second here, uh, let me see. How can I do this? Let me think here for just a second. Uh, have you up on Skype? Let me see here. If okay, I got you up on Skype, and let me do this. Okay, are we at which number do I have here? Which one number are you? 5393 or 4879? All right. Is that the one I'm talking to you on now? Okay. Okay. Let me hang up and let me call you right back. Do I have you, Russell? I ain't hearing it. Damn it. I ain't hearing you, Russell. Hang on, let me see if I can figure that out. Testing 1, 2, 3. That's working. And Russell, can I hear you? Can you hear me now? Can I hear you now?
I hear you well.
All right, I got it working. Now, let me see if this is working. Okay. All right. Repeat what you just said about Baphomet. I think that's interesting, and I want people to know about it.
Okay, well, the word Baphomet or Baphomet, as I said, you say potato, I say potato, or vice versa, is a French word. And if you did your research and your homework, as I have done, it's derived from two words. One is Baptist, for B-A-P, Bap, and Home, which means man. So in essence, the word is Baptist man. Who was the Baptist man? John the Baptist, who was not a friend or a disciple of Jesus, the Lord of the Magi and the Gnostic Master, who was not a Jew, as I've said many times, in case you folks didn't know. And you could find that out in Pontius Pilate's diary. But when John the Baptist was beheaded, Salome got a hold of his head and brought it to her secret society. Because in the secret societies, it's believed that if you have the head or the skull of a powerful deceased individual, you will have control of his power. And that's what was done. Baphomet is John the Baptist. Just like George Bush Sr., George Poppy Bush, the ex-president and major CIA drug dealer, has the head of Geronimo, who was a very powerful Indian chief. That's how the secret societies work, folks. But tonight, we have a matter of grave importance here that's being not too talked about on mainstream media, and that is the FCC total control of the Internet. Obama signed the executive order on February 16th, and it was passed on February the 26th. This means you'll hear a lot of nonsense on mainstream media, which is owned by World Jewry. It's completely Zionist controlled, as I've said many times. You could Google that. They own 96% of the world media. But it has grave applications because they could trace you online. And you don't want that because they could come and arrest you at 4 o'clock in the morning, which is a very good time for them to act. Now, you can avoid all this by becoming untraceable online and not getting caught with a VPN, a new IP address. How you could get that, and you have to get it from a foreign country. You could get it from a website called ANO, ANONINE, ANO9, like the number 9, but it's written out. ANONINE.com. For a very low sum, you could be hooked up in Sweden where they have no real regulation, or in the Netherlands on the internet, so you'll be totally secure. You could also, if you go to my Facebook website, my Facebook site, which is facebook.com/Phoenix Speaks 1, you could actually make your cell phone untraceable. Because I have a video on there how to make your iPhone untrackable in 2 minutes or less. This is going to be very important because the internet has been our modus operandi, our way of getting the truth out. Because you can't hear the truth in America on mainstream media. In fact, the video that I talked of earlier, in case it didn't come through, which is on Clay's website, freeamerican.com, the website that many of you are on right now. You could look up Myron Fagan, his 2.5-hour video on the Illuminati, which will prove that the Zionists have total control of everything in the United States. Every senator, every congressman, no matter how nice they sound. They're only there to make you think that some of them are brave and on your side, but they're not. All they really are is politically correct prostitutes who are under the payroll of the Jewish gold. But back to that internet situation, it's going to get very sticky. And I would suggest if you are an activist and you post stuff, that you get yourself set up with ANO9, you make your phone untrackable, and you get a voice changer, which should cost you about less than $200. You could then go on Facebook with a whole new page with different pictures, all dummy pictures, and it will be impossible for them to track you. This is a matter of importance because
Russell,
we have to get the truth out.
Russell, this is just me personally. I don't like that. I don't like that idea. I don't like the idea that I need to do that because I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not doing anything wrong. What I'm doing is exactly what I took an oath to do, and that's defend this Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Well, Clay, I happen to agree with you, but in an age of universal deceit, telling the truth as we do is a revolutionary act. And many of the folks out there don't want to get thrown into a FEMA camp where they'll never again see the light of day. So the answer is this: if you don't do that, be prepared when they come to make a lot of widows. And at least you'll go out as a martyr.
Well,
and if enough people go out as a martyr,
that's why, Russell, that's why we have to organize some way. We have to build our own communities and strengthen our own communities. And this has been going on, 100 years, at least 100 years. And
according to Myron Fagan, and I agree with him because he proves it substantially. This has been going on since the 1760s. So that is almost 300 years.
Yep.
That's how bad it is.
Well, it goes back a little further than that.
We know.
Quiet, Russell.
Come on, go ahead, Blake.
first issue of the Free American, which is available for free up on Free American, the first renewed issue of the Free American is up on the website. And in one of the pages here, I'm not even sure which one, 3 or 4, 5, 6 pages in, 7 pages in, Benjamin Friedman, a Jew, a Jewish historian, a researcher, a scholar, publisher of something called Common Sense, he said Christians have been duped by the unholiest hoax in all of history by so-called Jews. This is considered their most effective weapon. The big lie technique is brainwashing the United States Christians into believing that Jesus Christ was King of the Jews in the sense that the so-called Jews today call themselves Jews. This reference was first made in an English translation of the Old and New Testaments centuries before so-called Jews hijacked the word Jew in the 18th century to palm themselves off on the Christian world as having a kinship with Jesus Christ. This alleged kinship comes from the myth of their common ancestry and the so-called Jews of the Holy Land in the Old Testament, a fiction based on fable. Agree with that, Russell?
Yeah, now, Clay, you be quiet and let me augment on that. Let me accentuate that this has been going on for longer than the time of Christ. This has been going on for thousands of years. This is a very serious problem. The religion of Christianity, which was never a religion, because Jesus didn't want to start a religion. He was against religion. He had the alternative to religion, which was called Gnosticism, or being saved by knowledge, and the application of that knowledge. But the religion was hijacked by, you know who it was, Clay? Saul of Taurus, who called himself Paul, and you folks out there call him a saint. He wasn't a saint, he was a Pharisee that murdered the early Gnostic Christians. And he started his own religion, which is Pauline Christianity, which is a sham and a farce. It has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus.
Be a good
slave. This is a very serious problem, and I'll tell you the truth, as cool, Clay, as Benjamin Friedman was, and he was a maven. In fact, he owned the Woodbury Soap Company and sold it for $2 million. And prior to that, he was a major Zionist who used to debate with Henry Ford, who owned the Dearborn Express, switched over and realized, because he couldn't live with himself, of how evil these Zionist Jews were. But Myron Fagan actually states in his video, which you have on your site, which is over 2 hours, 2.5, that these Zionist Jews, Jews who are not Jews, will sacrifice millions of regular non-Zionist Jews for the sake of the New World Order. Folks, you have to listen to that video. But back to that net, you have to, Clay, I kind of agree with, he doesn't like the idea of being untrackable. In other words, he don't give a frack. And I tend to agree with him, but many of you out there do.
I've told people.
So the choice is...
I have told people, you know, FBI agents, I hope your FBI agents out there in the audience listening to me today, you can save a lot of taxpayer dollars. You don't have to tap my phone, man, turn in the radio show. I'll tell you everything I know. It's I walked into the FBI office and dropped off a bundle of magazines. I said, you just passed that homegrown terrorist thing, and I brought enough magazines for every agent in the building. I just wanted you guys to know who I am. And they kind of laughed. They said, we know who you are, Clay, but, you know, I was able to walk out, huh?
Well, first of all, Clay, they respected you for having the audacity and the brazenness to walk in the way you did, because no matter what, there are many of them that do respect us, because we're not afraid of telling the truth, unlike the American masses, who I call the robo-sapiens, the sheeple, or the Aloha, as H.G. Wells predicted they would become once they were emasculated over the course of time, and the American male is emasculated. Many of the women out there have more bravery and courage than the American males. We're in a very sad situation here, because we don't need everybody to wake up. We know everybody will wake up because of many factors. And folks, if you want to know what those factors are, just go to YouTube and listen to why people can't wake up. And then you'll know it has to do with a lot of things. But we need a critical mass. We need the rainbow warriors, as predicted in the Hopi tradition, to wake up. They come from many races and colors, even Jews.
Yeah, they do. I mean, I published the statements of a former soldier of the IDF. I guess you would call them a refuseniks now. And he said that the Americans are the next Palestinians, and that's exactly what's happened. Eli James was on my show today and this morning, and we talked about the genocide of white people. Now, back to this first article by Benjamin Friedman. He goes on, he says so-called Jews are historic Khazar ancestors, or Khazars. And he says unsuspecting Christians are subjected to this barrage from sources they have little reason to suspect. Incontestable facts supply the unchallengeable proof of the historic accuracy that so-called Jews throughout the world today of Eastern European origin are unquestionably the historic descendants of the Khazars. So he's telling you that you're being programmed, folks, by this, by the television set. They don't call it programming for nothing, and they're not talking about just the channel. They're talking about you.
In other words, folks, you have to wake up. Democracy in America is a charade. And I'm going to say something. I'm going to play a clip, because I have a way to play it. It's less than 5 minutes, and I'll speak on the 5 subdivisions of the diabolical and insidious so-called democratic system, which is naught but a system of deceit, chicanery, dogma, propaganda, indoctrination, and mind control. And I will connect the dots. Here we go. Wait a minute. Okay. Cornwallis said to Washington. I'm sorry, I caught it in the middle. Let me sum it up for you, so you yourself can connect the dots. Let's start with religion. Religion, of course, is one of the churches. The word church, if you know anything about etymology, even half of it, as you know, you want American Idol, shame on you, really. You would know that the word church comes from the Scottish word camp, which comes from the Greek word Socrates, who was an ancient, evil goddess who lured men looking for salvation outside of themselves. And what happened? Got them drunk on the lines of illusion and turned them into pigs. To make matters worse, at the treaty after the American Revolution, Cornwallis said to Washington, within 200 years, your churches will be permeated with the Jewish religion. Your Christianity is bullshit. It has nothing to do with what the Master Jesus taught. It was Judaicized by Paul, and then Judaicized again over and over the years. Now, that we've got religion out of the way, let's go to media. of the world media. Case closed. Government. Okay, if you look up the word government and you study the etymology instead of watching, as I said, American Idol and those so stupid reality shows, you would know that the word government comes from the Latin word, two Latin words, one of which is governator, which means to steer, direct, and control, and the word mentis, which means the mind. So government is nothing more than mind control. As you know what's government? Google that too. The Jews own most of the governments in the world this day and age. Now, let's go to education. Oh yeah. Education is not education at all. It's a total brainwashing, a mind controlling, and an indoctrination system that I like to call the public food system or the pubic indoctrination system that jails your kids a good 6 to 8 hours a day. Teaches them to think only inside of the box, not outside the box. So in essence, when your child graduates from college or high school, he can memorize a lot of so-called facts that are not facts. In essence, he becomes a stupid, a robo sapien, or as you once put it, the robot. Now let's go to the military. The military does not fight for freedom. No way. The military fights for the military industrial complex, which is owned by Zionist Jew bankers, who wage perennial war for perennial profit, because they fund both sides of the conflict and charge interest on the money that they lend. And then these so-called opponents go out and buy armaments, and we know it's the armament companies, the Jews. Folks, if you connect the dots correctly, you'll come out with one answer. It's the Jews, stupid. And there you have it.
All right, well, the head Jew was just here, and as I said when you came on, we may have missed some of that. I got a picture here that Netanyahu was holding up to show Congress the real commander-in-chief, the Baphomet, which you explained to us what that was. But Preston James works for Veterans Today, and by the way, my morning show will probably be going on Veterans Today, which will expand our audience to 200,000 or more. That's how many subscribers they have. Preston James, I've used his articles a lot. He's really got a good insight into the whole Khazarian Mafia, as he calls it. And he talks about Netanyahu, a very crafty man, is the recognized operational leader of the worldwide wealthy and powerful Khazarian Mafia, which is based in the City of London financial district and uses Israel as its main action agent. However, he has two serious flaws, Preston James says. The first one is extreme hubris, which has led him to go too far in his quest to infiltrate and hijack the whole world for the Khazarian Mafia. This extreme hubris was especially evident when he gave the go-ahead for the 9/11 nuclear attack on America. This extreme, unimaginable hubris led Bibi's deployment of the nuclear attack on America on 9/11/01 using the Mossad, the PNA Sears, top neocons, Israeli-American Israeli first dual citizens living in America, traitors in the JCS, U.S. Air Force, NORAD, FAA, and the Bush crime cabal, all of who functioned as partners in crime or assets of Bibi and the Khazarian Mafia. What do you think, Russell?
bona fide fact, I just want to expound because I don't know how many new listeners we have out there today. I'm going to explain briefly, what the word Khazarian means. Khazarian comes from the word Khazaria, which also comes from the word Khazar. It was a place that you can't find in any history book unless you get a history book of at least 200 years old, and they are available. Khazaria was located in the steppes of Eastern Europe. Were a large group of barbarian people, a Turco-Finnish Mongoloid race who call themselves Khazars, or Khazars. Again, you say potato, I say potato. They were plunderers, very evil people. They were originally the descendants of Japhet. Then, of course, along the way, they became the descendants of the Burghers and the Mayas, who were the descendants of Attila the Hun. And what happened was they were always faced with conflicts between the so-called Holy Roman Empire, which was anything but holy, and the Muslim Empire, which was the same nonsense. No empire is any good. And they would come through Khazaria to fight each other. So what happened is they knew they had to choose a religion, so they would undecided of whether to choose Catholicism or Islam. They sent for the messengers, the emissaries from both religions, and on the way, at the time, the Jews, Sephardic Jews, because there were a few left at that time, killed the messengers. And then they sent in their rabbis and converted the Khazarian people in the main they converted the King Begin,
Was
to
it Bulan?
a religion
King
called
Bulan?
Talmudism, which became Judaism, as Clay said earlier, in the 17th century. But, and this is why we can't condemn all the Jews, because there was a very large group, not large enough, within the Khazars who changed their name to Khazarites, and they fought King Begin's armies. They lost. And the whole country turned to Talmudism. Eventually they were defeated by the Mongols, and they spread across into Eastern Europe, into Poland, in Germany, in Frankfurt, and formed ghettos where they ran their own governments. That's where you get the word ghetto. Ghetto has nothing to do with black people who have been demonized by these Jews. In fact, these Jews ran the entire slave trade. You could get that by YouTubing or Googling Walter White Jr.'s 1968 essay, which is very articulate and true intelligence, not the pseudo-intelligent nonsense that you get from mainstream media or in your schools, as I said in that clip I played. And that's where you get the name Khazar. It would be located today in the Ukraine area, on the steppes of Eastern Europe.
They are trying to go back to take over their old, or reestablish their old homeland, and they're going to kill all the Ukrainians. They killed 11 million of them in the under Stalin, starved them out. That's like killing 11 million people in Kansas, starving to death 11 million people in Kansas. They confiscated all of the wheat.
Well, didn't our Swedish Jew, who was president in the 50s, do the same thing to the German people?
Absolutely, and also England. Germany was not bombing England. It was not going after the civilians. Germany, but England sent their bombers in on Dresden and murdered a couple of 100,000 people, burned them to death. Horrible deaths.
Well, absolutely, but who is England? England is the Brits, or Great Britain. Again, I always say, as I was taught years ago by George Maxwell, know your word roots, your etymology, not entomology, which is the study of bugs. And you would find that the word Brit means man of the covenant. In other words, the covenant with an archon, a demon, a false god by the name of Yahweh or Jehovah. See, folks, the Jews today, the holy ones, worship Satan. The rabbis at the top of the order know it is Satan that they worship. Because Jehovah is Satan, and if you doubt me, read Paul Tice's work, Jumping Jehovah. Read Helena Blavatsky, who, by the way, Hillary Clinton admired and studied. She'll prove that Jehovah is Satan. And Satan, folks, is not Lucifer. The Masons don't worship Lucifer. They only say they worship Lucifer to get you off the track. Lucifer
I don't know there, Russell. I wrote a novel about that long time ago, and Lucifer, I believe, in my novels, Yahweh was the evil God. He was the captain of the Earth ship Heaven, the most powerful vehicle ever built. Anti-gravity, they could tractor beams, lasers, and Lucifer was a good guy. He was kicked out of heaven into the hell that was earth at the time of the conjunction or the passing, planet X or Mars or Venus or whichever it was, depends on which scientist you study. And they built half a dozen of these Earth ships. One of them was called the Olympus, Captain Zeus, people like that. I think that's where our legends came from.
In the oldest book in the world, and I forget the name of it, it's written in Sanskrit, it states, as you were alluding to, when Earth and Mars and Venus were in perfect conjunction, the great Sanat, S-A-N-A-T, reverse those words, you get Satan, Gomorrah, with 5 other Gomorrahs, came down in their spaceships onto Earth and got a hold of man who was a hermaphrodite, both men and women, and split him apart. In other words, they recreated mankind in their own image. And that's where you get the biblical tale, let us go down and make man into our image. Folks,
they've certainly been using us to mine the gold and grow the drugs. Every one of these civilizations with the Great Pyramids is right in a prime dope growing region. Whether it's Peru with the cocaine or Colombia with the heroin,
Well, they needed that. I believe it's monoscopic gold.
Monatomic gold, yes, sir. That adds to the enhances the anti-gravity, I believe, and it also extends your life. Extends your life. We used to live for 900 years, didn't we?
Right. They needed it to enhance their atmosphere, and they recreated a slave race. They divided man in two and created a slave race to mine the gold. And folks, you could Google this too, or read it in very old books. There are gold mines in Africa in perfect condition, deep below the ground, that are over 100,000 years old.
Yes.
And yet your religious teachers will give you that nonsense that the earth is only 4,000 years old.
We walked with dinosaurs. We walked with dinosaurs, ladies and gentlemen.
What do you think the dragons were? You see, folks, we've been taken, hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, mesmerized, put to sleep, and mind-fucked. Those of you that think you're awake are walking around with your eyes open wide shut, just like that Tom Cruise movie. You got to really wake up, and the only way you're going to wake up is get baptized. And I don't mean by a minister or a priest who sprinkles water on you after he put his hand in it, and who knows where he had his hand before he stuck it in the holy water. Nothing would surprise me. But you have to do a symbolic cleansing with symbolic water of all the lies, misinformation, and disinformation that has been instilled in you by your parents and your grandparents because it was instilled with them. Oh yeah, they tried to help you for the greater good, but it wasn't. They hurt you because they were hurt and they didn't know any better. Everything that you have been taught is a bold-faced lie. And America is far from a free country. In fact, America is the laughing stock of the world. They don't like us out there because they think we're all stupid. And
well, you know, we are doing something here, folks. But what you need to understand, Russell and I are doing something that is a game changer here. It is why 10, 20 years ago I started the Free American magazine, and Russell read it, and that's how we got to know each other. And BB and his stateside PNAC boys and assets never realized what the full impact of the growing popularity of the worldwide internet would turn out to become. They did not understand that the internet has become the new Gutenberg press of the world. They did not understand that the new popularity of the internet and would eventually result in the U.S. military high command, most American soldiers, with the average American finding out not only did Israel do the 9/11 attacks on America with the help of American traitors, nor did they ever conceive that mainstream America would find out that 9/11/01 was also a nuclear attack using decommissioned W-54 Davy Crockett rocket pits stolen out the back door at Pantex in Texas. And there's a second major flaw, one that is shared by most of his Likudist compatriots, talking about Netanyahu again, which is the extreme paranoid racial delusion that everyone in the world is trying to destroy the Jewish race in Israel. This kind of delusion is dangerous when it produces first blood preemptive attacks because it can end up functioning as a self-fulfilling prophecy. This tendency by the Likud to engage in numerous preemptive strikes based on this paranoid racial delusion has also resulted in numerous unjustified attacks on innocent Palestinians and the covert formation of ISIL or ISIS or DAISH. Russell.
Well, Clay, what they're trying to do is create a negative universe because of basically the Satans or the Archons, what you could read about in the Dead Sea Scrolls. They want to make this a negative universe where nobody understands the concept of freedom. They don't want freedom. They're a select group. They're highly intelligent. They plan years in advance. They're not addicted to what most Americans are addicted to, instant gratification. They make their progress in baby steps through each administration, getting laws passed that stifle freedom, laws that are passed in the guise or the name of the greater good. Folks, you have to understand that everything that comes out of the mouth of a politician is nothing more than a Zionist Jew bowel movement.
If you're speaking out against them the way we are, and even though I was in the presidential race with Charles Collins, they never showed him on television. Nobody knew he was even running unless you were reading the Free American or listening to my show. Now, this thing with the BB
Netanyahu.
I'm sorry, what?
That's the way it is, Clay. They control the media and they put whoever they want on the podium.
That's
they
right.
Make you think you have a choice by putting their candidates on, and if there was a real candidate, he would never get the airtime. It is an impossibility in the lost and enslaved states of new America, which is nothing more, as I've said many times, a kosher sewage plant.
All the way back to 1996. That's when Charles Collins ran for president. 1996. And every cameraman on stage turned the cameras off and pointed them at the ground. And we'd go in that night, put up Collins for president posters. By the next morning, they were all gone.
Clay, speaking about that 1996 election, they had two guys up there, and that was it. Slick Willie Rockefeller Clinton, as I like to call him, and of course Bob Dole, who made a deliberate fool of himself because he sounded like a jerk when he went on TV. And yet, I was so upset with the way he sounded, and I couldn't understand why they would allow such a foolish, stupid man who acted like Bozo the Clown run for president. I had to do some delving and research into Dole and found out he was the head of the Senate committee, and I listened to his speech, and I said, oh my, what an articulate son of a gun. What a great speaker. But he didn't sound like that when he was campaigning. He sounded deliberately stupid because Clinton was the choice of the global elite, the Jewish Illuminati, the Elders of Zion, the Sanhedrin, the Synagogue of Satan, to become president. And he did. And he did nothing for the country. Many of you folks out there, you think you had a great economy. The only reason you had a great economy during the Clinton years, because people were spending money that they took out of the equity in their homes by refinancing their homes with bogus appraisals, and I know well because I was doing $3 to $5 million a month in loans in the boroughs of New York and in certain areas in Florida, very little in Florida, primarily in New York during that financial craze.
Don't they call that loan sharking?
Well, yeah, and I'm not going to deny I was not part of it because I used to have a thing with the appraisal when I would call the appraiser, and I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but one appraiser was a former captain of the New York Police Force. He's a good friend of mine. He was retired, and I would call him up on the phone. I need you to get over here ASAP. He says, what kind of appraisal is it? I said, bring the limo. He said, it's a stretch. Yes. That's all we talked about. That meant that he would get paid at the door on a two-family house. At the time, it was $450, and when the loan closed, he would get another $450 from me. Basically, he'd get a double dip. So he stretched the value, and nobody questioned.
All right,
anything.
Let's get back here to Bibi Netanyahu and what he was doing to Americans here. I've got somewhere here you can get a link on to hear his whole speech. I personally don't want to listen to it, but Veterans Today said all this same paranoid racial delusion has led Bibi to attempt to manipulate Israeli sympathizers inside America by delivering a speech based on our well-conceived, manipulative, but clearly false claims. And then he goes on to talk about the Khazarian Mafia is a large organized crime cabal run out of the city of London financial district, a separate country with its own ambassadors, police force like the Vatican, and pays no taxes to England. Mike Harris, who I'm in contact with in Veterans Today, says was able to discover this hidden history, almost all of which has been carefully extracted from the history books and libraries. The more he focused on this hidden history, the more facts emerged to explain the intense intergenerational lust for bloodletting and revenge against the Russian people and the American people for successfully bucking and defeating the Khazarian Mafia numerous times in the past. Now, both Russia under Putin and the American sleeping giant are both on a collision course once again with the Khazarian Mafia in a final battle of the ages. It's going to be bloody, at least in America, as the Khazarian Mafia police force, occupation force, Homeland Security run by some of the biggest American traitors and dual citizen Israeli firsters, infiltrators, ever start as a civil war against the American people as they deploy their long-planned operation to transform America into Gaza 2, the world's largest open-air prison camp, and make 90% of Americans the new Palestinians. What I told you months ago, folks. And here's Veterans Today coming online, and Gordon Duff is talking about running for president. I've already got banners up for him. Russell, this is exactly what's happening. They're trying to set us against Putin, trying to get us to fight Russia again. Another Cold. We need another Cold War.
Yeah, I'm going to make a point here about this whole Putin charade. Granted, Putin is much more of a man than Obama, who is not a man. Obama is a homosexual. He is a degenerate. His mother was a communist Jew. However, Putin and Obama, I believe, and I'll give you the reasons why, they may not like each other, but they work for the same cause, the creation of the New World Order. I know Putin threw out the Federal Reserve banks in Russia, but why are there thousands upon thousands of Russian troops in America ready to kill American citizens if Putin was really on our side? Why are there Chinese troops in America ready to kill us? Why are there German troops in America? Because the whole thing is a charade. These guys get their soldiers to kill each other off, to weaken all the countries so that a world federation can be established called the New World Order, which really should be called the Jew World Order. That is the reason, folks. Everything you hear is a charade. ISIS was created by Israel and the United States. There is no ISIS threat.
They're certainly killing people.
Except the global elite.
They're certainly killing people, but I had photographs of some so-called Palestinian terrorists, and they were wearing a 6-point star.
It's comical. Well, just like Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is a buzzword for any CIA agent or any Arab that works for the Israeli Mossad. It's a joke. It's always to make you think there's an enemy that wants to take away your freedom. The only people that want to take away your freedom are your rulers. Wake the frack up.
The DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, plans to cut off the food and water through some staged terror or engineered weather, then transport Americans to resettlement camps where the men, women, and children will be separated and progressively and systematically exterminated. All red list American dissidents, that would be me and Russell, and vets, that would be me, will immediately be exterminated. Now, this Khazarian Mafia that is ISIS, that is Al-Qaeda, Al-CIA, is run by the Rothschild family and its close associate. It controls over 90% of the central banks of the world, which are based on phony fiat money, which is actually counterfeit. They have put a worldwide system of banking in place that is based on ancient Babylonian money magic, which specializes in the accrual of debt from pernicious usury, which is used to make debt slaves of those under the control of their fraudulent private central banking system. In America, we are under the occult Babylonian money magic bondage of the Federal Reserve, which it uses this usury to make debt slaves out of most Americans. The Khazarian Mafia's origin goes back to ancient Babylon, where they worship the false god Baal, Baal. Now, these same family lines became prominent in the nation of Khazaria, which was severely sanctioned twice by surrounding nations in 600 AD and again in 1200 AD.
You know, that's amazing because you mentioned Baal. Again, you could call him Baal or Baal. You say potato, I say potato. But I was reading Tolkien's great work, his lifelong work, The Silmarillion, which, of course, The Lord of the Rings is only a part of. And he uses the name Melkor, who was Sauron's boss. In other words, Sauron was an angel or a god who went against the prime creator, Iluvatar, or El. And what happened was I got a hold of an ancient Canaanite book, which I have in my library. It only has transcripts, and I came across that someone came down from the heavens and called himself Baal or Baal Melkor. Same name, Melkor. Told men he was God, and men believed him. Men who would believe anything, as long as they get some power. And he bestowed power on them, and he ruled them. And he made many of them into his image, a predator. And folks, you know, you say, oh, these guys are anti-Bible. Absolutely. But we're not anti-real Bible. If you read the Dead Sea Scrolls, you would find out, and you read the hypostasis of the archons. By the way, the Dead Sea Scrolls are also called the Nag Hammadi Scrolls. They will tell you that the God Yahweh and Jehovah are archons, or interdimensional beings who came down to take control of your planet. And they've been in control ever since. They have no creative abilities. What they'll do is steal from the ingenuity of man and capitalize it, because what they are master manipulators. And I believe they did create the Jewish race when Cain, who was not the son of Adam, if you read your Bible correctly, it even says it when Eve when the Eve, that's who it really means, begot Cain, she didn't say, oh, I've gotten a man from my husband Cain. She said, I have gotten a man from the Lord, who was Samuel. Folks, again, you've really been fooled. Your whole conditioning is so intense that it's hard for you to wake up. You want everything to be better. You go to the polls every 4 years or every 2 years and think it's going to change. It's not. Well, it's not going to change for the better. It will change because everything is in a constant state of flux. It is changing for the worse, election after election, because the only thing that your lawmakers and your politicians will do, regardless of what they tell you, after an election, whether it be 2 years or 5 or 4 years, is pass more laws that restrict your freedom. This government has to be taken down by any means necessary. And
well, we just talked about that the other day, too.
Has to be eliminated.
Just talked about that the other day, too. You know, the reason they came after me, folks, that old biker from Texas, is because I started and arranged for training for the militia in New Mexico. And I did it in the governor's office with the governor's full knowledge. No terrorist group there, just a bunch of veterans and law enforcement and citizens that cared about this country. It's force. Force is the only thing that's going to take these politicians, these lawyers, out of the courtrooms and put them in jail where they belong. They ain't going to go quietly.
You had 1,000 snipers. I don't believe in putting them in jail. I believe they should be terminated with extreme prejudice. If there were 1,000 snipers out there, professional military men, snipers, who realized that they had been fighting for the wrong people, went to work, they could take all these leaders out within a week and eliminate the entire Israeli lobby. Eliminate the Senate, every one of them, including Ted Cruz, who's a Zionist shill, and Rand Paul, who's another Zionist. You got to wake up, folks. You've been sold out by your so-called leaders, the ones that you went to the polls for like a horse's ass and voted for. You really made a fool of yourself, folks. You really, really did.
Well, you know what? I said that I said the wealthy elite believe that most humans are too dumb to govern themselves, and from our voting record, the current administration proves their point. And we keep voting the same ones into office.
Well, the wealthy elite are right, because the only good form of, there is no good form of government, but the only thing that works, and then you have to have a good king, is a monarchy, because every democracy is ruled by a hidden few, a cabal, a coterie.
Well,
and the only way, and it turns into, as George Orwell said, a collective oligarchy. A democracy is without a doubt the worst form of government. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just looking for this here. Hang on a second. Alright. This Khazarian oligarchy, it was in 600 AD, was for Khazarians' normal practice of robbing travelers passing through Khazaria, murdering them, robbing them, and then falsely assuming their identities whenever possible. The Khazarian king was given the ultimatum to pick one of the three Abrahamic religions as your national religion and order your people to practice it and raise their kids in it. The Khazarian king picked Judaism, but he and his court secretly continued to practice a form of Baal worship, better known as Luciferians or Satanism. Comment on that, Russell?
Well, firstly, I want to say I agree with that, but I want to take that word Luciferian, because if they practice Luciferian, they'd be good, because Lucifer is a light bearer. Lucifer is also known as Prometheus.
In the novel that I wrote, Lucifer, the church had the churches and the pseudo-Christians out there. My character, Lucifer, was the leader of the Masons, which were organized to prevent the Catholic Church from running amok. So the Masons did not necessarily all bad until the Jews had started infiltrating them.
Absolutely. And remember, in the Latin Vulgate, they forgot to take something out. In Peter 1, it states very clearly, I, Jesus, am Lucifer, son of the morning, the light bearer. Lucifer is not Satan, like you've been led to believe. So I never use the word Luciferian. To me, it's pseudo-intellectual. It's false. Because Lucifer is the good guy. It's Satan that's the bad guy. And there are many Satans. Because Satan means adversary of creation, or adversary of the prime creator. Where do you think you get the name Yahweh from? It's a corruption by a demon who tried to call himself and make believe that he was the prime creator of the universe, which is Yod Hey Vav Hey, which means that which always was, is, and shall be. And it is not, as Clay has said many times, he doesn't look like Charlton Heston. He's not a grandfather type being. He's a spirit.
He's what holds your atoms together. He's the one, it's
Absolutely.
his intelligence that designed and created your DNA and the DNA of everything around us. Intelligent creation. And he was just bored, so he created you and me.
You know, when we use that word intelligent design, we always get flack from the advocates of Darwinism. Let me just make one thing clear. In the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, it states clearly that the Goyim have already bought into our doctrine of evolution, which is nonsense. You see, evolution, folks, was not written by Charles Darwin. It was written by his grandfather, Erasmus Darwin. Charles was asked to promote it. And in your schools, your children are shown in 10th grade biology pictures of Professor Edwin Haeckel drawings showing the progress of evolution. However, at an academic court many years ago in Jena, Switzerland, he broke down in the court and cried and admitted that all his drawings were fraudulent. And yet they're still shown in your schools. Just like the story of Anne Frank is talked about during the alleged Holocaust.
Written with a ballpoint pen.
Yep, they wrote it with a ballpoint pen, and there were no ballpoint pens before and during World War II, during the alleged Holocaust. The Holocaust is nothing more than an industry. They make a lot of money off it.
They advertise that 6 million Jews were going to die in the Ukraine about 1912. They used the 6 million. This is some kind of magic number for them, I guess.
Well, they got that figure from Sheridan's play that was written in, I believe, the 17th century or the early 18th century. Again, as far as the Holocaust, it never happened. Truthfully, and I know this sounds harsh, I wish it did happen. And I wish the Zionists were all cooked, baked in the ovens, but the ovens were never used, folks. It's a charade. It's a hoax. It's been proven not to have happened. The only Holocaust that I know of was the Jewish Bolshevik Holocaust, which you call the Russian Revolution, which over 100 million Christians were killed. And by the way, the reason they were killed in Russia and the Tsar was murdered because another Tsar wouldn't go along with the plans after the Napoleonic Wars of a one-world government, which they tried. And you could read about that, hear it in the video on Clay's website.
The League of Nations.
By Myron Fagan. It was the first League of Nations, yes.
Two countries refused to go along with it.
And of course, there's a Holocaust in Palestine right now.
That's right.
And there will be one in the United States unless you people wake up.
Well, that's what we're trying to do with Veterans Today and with me going on Veterans Today, getting this kind of information out. You need to understand how long this has been going on. The nations that surrounded Khazaria, or the Ukraine now, were led by Russia. They attacked and destroyed the Khazarian nation. The ruling families fled to Europe to continue their evil ways, eventually residing in Germany, France, and England, and taking over banking. They were able to place Oliver Cromwell in power in England, used him as a beachhead from which to deploy covert means to infiltrate and hijack the Bank of England, and eventually hijack the whole nation of England and the city of London. In 1913, the Khazarian Mafia chieftains were able to establish a beachhead in America with their induced illegal, unconstitutional passage of the Federal Reserve System. They were able to bribe enough members of Congress to get the law passed, but it was passed illegally because there was no required quorum present. Then the Rothschild plotted revenge against the Russians for destroying Khazaria and for helping the American colonists defeat England, as well as helping the North win the Civil War. They created Bolshevism and deployed in Russia in 1917 and proceeded to murder, torture, rape over 100 million innocent Russians, white Christians, as revenge. They then plotted revenge against America and began their plan to infiltrate, hijack, asset strip, abuse, tyrannize, and then destroy it while mass murdering most Americans. Do they not, people not realize how serious this is, Russell? That we're not doing this for just entertainment.
They actually believe what they don't know don't hurt them. It can't hurt them, but it actually has hurt them. Let me expound on that Cromwell deal.
Okay.
The Jews in Cromwell's time considered him to be their Messiah. And what really gets me, the Jews who own Hollywood got a major actor in 1970 to make a movie. I saw it when it came out on 72nd Street in Manhattan, called Cromwell, which they glorified Cromwell. Cromwell was an evil, excuse my language, motherfucker. That's all he was. He was the tool of the Jews. And yet Hollywood, which is jewelry wood, glorified him, just like they glorify every other villain and make him into a hero. It's really a pathetic situation. And you folks out there swallow every bit of it.
It goes on. Let's go into World War II. Because these KMs, whatever, these Khazarian Mafia or so, they created Nazism. And remember, Hitler didn't even like the word Nazi. This was created by the Ashkenazis. They used that to create their Holocaust psyop and anti-Semitism psyop to form the basis of a second World War that would rapidly increase their bankster profits and world power, which it did. Babylonian, Talmudic, Judaic leaders would then use two mind control triggers, Holocaust and anti-Semitism, to block any potential criticism of their post-World War II actions and continue to do so even to this day. Now, keep in mind, anytime somebody tells you Clay Douglas or Russell Pappalardo is an anti-Semite, that is their psyops on you to keep you from listening to us. That the Holocaust, anti-Semitism, the Rothschild used their crafty means to deploy work camps in Nazi Germany, where kidnapped Judaics were taken at gunpoint and forced to work on behalf of the Western-owned and controlled corporations supplying the Nazi war machine. Then they used their created PSYOP terms of Holocaust and anti-Semitism, which set up the nation-state of Israel to be their private enclave and action agent form, which they would proceed to infiltrate and hijack the whole world. And Israel has been deployed as the main action agent of the Khazarian Mafia causing wars, mass death, incredible mass human suffering and destruction all over the world in attempts to hijack the whole world and make massive profits from war, which is their specialty, folks. Now, this Khazarian mafia, which can also be appropriately referred to as neo-Bolsheviks under Bibi's leadership, proceeded to use his Mossad and stateside assets and traders to initiate a nuclear attack on America on 9/11/01, which was covered up by the Khazarian mafia's major mass media, which is paid off and by paid off members of Congress intel committees. By now, with the worldwide internet, the New Gutenberg Press, the actual truth of 9/11 initiating the 9/11/01 attacks on America is now being published and broadcast and is spreading like wildfire. And remember, I put building number 7 on the cover of the last magazine before they tried to kill me. March 2007. And folks, keep in mind too, the term Jew was never used until the 700 AD. It was never even conceived or used until 700 AD, and at that time was only applied to one of 12 Hebrew tribes of Israel, the tribe of Judah. And by now we know that the recent peer-reviewed Johns Hopkins genetic research shows that approximately 97.5% of Israelis have no ancient Hebrew blood and thus have no legitimate ancestral claim to any Palestinian lands, while 80% of the Palestinians do have ancient Hebrew blood and have an ancestral right to all Palestinian lands. What this means is the Israeli leaders are the world's biggest anti-Semites, not Russell.
No question about it.
Now, a person suffering from a paranoid racial delusion does not typically declare his private plans or intentions, but it's usually quite easy to know what they are because they typically frequently express them by accusing others of what they are actually doing. This practice is best referred to as the psychological defense mechanism of projection. Bottom line, if you want to know what Bibi and his boys are up to in secret, just listen carefully to his accusations towards others, especially Islamics in general, and specifically Iranians, Palestinians, and Hamas, which was secretly started and financed by Israel as a false flag terror mechanism to justify Israeli aggression against Palestinian and more theft of their land. Bibi's ridiculous speech before Congress was filled with lie after lie, but if one carefully examines what he actually stated, it also reveals his secret intentions and the evil he has been directing Israel to do as a nation state. If you take Bibi's ridiculous speech in Congress and listen to it carefully, or read a transcript and then substitute the word Israel, or even better, the Likudist, every time the word Iran appears, substitute the term Israelis every time the word radical Islamic appears, or Hezbollah, you'll be amazed at how these substitutions fit. Yes, Bibi was projecting the secret dirty sins of Israel and the Likudists that run it. And how did the Likudists get into power? The same way the Khazarian mafia, kingpins and cutouts always acquire the illegitimate power of another nation. They infiltrated and hijacked using the money power of the city of London, Khazarian mafia banksters, aka the Rothschild private world Zionists, fiat central bankers, and political influence it buys. The Khazarian mafia knew that in order to expand their influence they had to remain covert, therefore they set up a worldwide system of Satanism, specializes in Babylonian black magic, pedophilia, child sacrifice, and other actions based on the satanic law, do what thou wilt. They infiltrated Masonry, especially using the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. Obviously, they treated them with the same law of do what they will, they would be shot down in the streets and assassinated their own lawyers, being exterminated within a month.
All one has to do is go to Washington, D.C. and see all the buildings. The buildings are all designed from ancient Babylon or ancient Rome. The Washington Monument is a giant phallic symbol. Google it. Wake up. The Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor was given to us by the French Freemasons. It represents the liberties that they would take upon you over the ensuing years, which they have done. It does not represent freedom like the fools or the ones who were brainwashed believe it represents. And truthfully, I once did too. I'm sure Clay did in his youth. But we were young and naive, and we didn't know better. We believed that nonsense.
What did I do?
We know it now, though.
What did I do when I was young?
Well, I'm sure, when you went to high school, you believed the Statue of Liberty represented freedom. I think we all did, until we woke up and did our homework and realized that it means only one thing: the liberties that the government would take upon us over the ensuing years, which they did. Folks, you got to realize how bad it is. I mean, Netanyahu said in another video that 80% of the Americans support Israel. If that's true, that's a shame. That means 8 out of 10 Americans is a demented fool. That's not good.
Well, I kind of worry about that, Russell.
Go ahead. Clay, go ahead.
Look who we keep electing year after year after year. All these congressmen in here, some of them have been in there for 30 or 40 years. And 40 years ago, the Lindberghs and people like that and McCarthy knew what was happening and tried to tell people, and they made McCarthy a bad word. Now, how can this Khazarian mafia be stopped in its inhuman criminal efforts to take over and control the whole world? Obviously, this is a difficult task because the Khazarian mafia owns and controls over 90% of the central banks in the world. Their central banking system is privately owned by the Rothschild and a small collection of related bloodline families. The Khazarian mafia has actually been able to use its espionage fronts in America to buy, bribe, and human compromise almost every member of the U.S. Congress. Thus, the Khazarian mafia can create most of the money it needs as long as it doesn't put so much money in circulation that the whole system goes Weimar like it did in post-World War I Germany. The KM has other ways to raise the funds it needs to operate and pay its mercenary forces deployed as ISIL, ISIS, Daesh. They've got international illegal narcotics, weapon trafficking, illegal organ trafficking, often associated with kidnapping and murder, human trafficking, kidnapping, sex trafficking, forced prostitution, home mortgage scams such as MERS, manipulation of the stock market using shorts and induced media reported incidents to drive the stock prices down, setting up secret Mossad fronts as a DOD or U.S. government contractors to obtain massive U.S. taxpayer funds as corporate welfare. And folks, that's the way they operate. You know, it's I blew the whistle on George Bush's drug trafficking operation, Bill Clinton's drug trafficking operation called Operation Watchtower. And, of course, they came after me then. The best strategy, according to Preston James, Dr. Preston James, the best strategy to stop the Khazarian mafia and its takedown in the whole world. Expose the perps to everyone you can. Expose all the big Khazarian media mafias, lies, false narratives, and propaganda broadcasts and published by their six-controlled major mass media. Be polite and reasonable when you do this, and it's probably best to avoid talking about this while at work. This means to tell your friends, family, and other associates who seem open. Got a better idea for you. Use me. Use Russell here. We're telling the truth here. Dr. Preston James says we're telling the truth. And he talks about the internet. I am on the internet. FreeAmerican.com. Shop.freeamerican.com. The show's up there. We're up on a number of different networks, and we'll be on Veterans Today. Tell people about this show. Make a donation. Go to freeamerican.com. Make a donation. And Preston says, which I've been doing for almost a year now, take Veterans Today articles that present the evidence that Israel did 9/11 and that it was a nuclear attack on America, and share them, repost them on Facebook and other social media and blogs if you use them. The sooner Americans find out that 9/11 was a nuclear attack on America and Israel did it using stateside assets and was ordered by Bibi, the better. Now, Veterans Today has published the findings of previously secret AEC Sandia Labs investigation on 9/11/01, which was taken by Snowden to the Russian Federation, who dumped them into the public domain into Veterans Today. We have to break up the controlled major mass media. Their six controlled major mass media cartel actually forms an illegal news monopoly or cartel. We need to enforce all existing antitrust laws and break this news monopoly up into hundreds of independent news bureaus. We need to decapitate...
I believe you have to...
What's that?
I believe it has to be done by force. Force has to be used.
I believe the only way is if a lot of the military snipers switch sides and the people use guerrilla warfare tactics like the Afghanistan people did in their 10-year war against the Russians, where the Russians finally gave up.
It was too expensive to continue on. And at that time, Russia was still under the control of the Jews until the Soviet Union fell apart.
I trust no government, no matter what it is. To me, government, as I said earlier in that clip, is mind control. Statism is slavery. There should be only one law, and that is to do unto others the way you would have them done unto you. In other words, follow Aleister Crowley's advice. Do what thou wilt is the whole extent of the law. But remember, what goes around comes around. So do right. Take the road, as Robert Frost stated, less traveled. Don't follow the Bible. It's BS. Follow the cosmic and spiritual laws of the universe. Follow the golden rule of Jesus, the Gnostic master, who again was not a Jew.
I just did in the process of doing a CD with 5 days of interviews with the indigenous population of this country, the American Indians. And they don't particularly like to refer to themselves as Indians, but that's what you know them as. And they refer to the Creator, just as we talked about, the force that holds your atoms together, that formed your DNAs, you know, is all around us. And Jesus tried to tell you, you don't need priests, you don't need preachers, you don't need the John Hagees out there. God's your creator. God's created you. You got a direct contact with him. Now, number 3 here in Preston James' list, says we have to decapitate the Khazarian mafia from its elastic fiat counterfeited money supply. This means nationalize the Federal Reserve, set up a new money system backed by gold, silver, and real assets and commodities. We ought to back it with hemp. Seize all of the assets and records and transfer it to the Department of Treasury. Cancel the phony national debt. Claw back all of the Federal Reserve System owners' assets gained in this massive financial counterfeiting fraud. Go all the way back to its origin in 1913. Remember, there's no statute of limitations for major fraud like this. Seize all the banks, empty homes taken by MERS fraud. Distribute all these seized and clawed back funds and real estate, set up a panel of citizens from all classes and occupations to distribute these assets to those damaged and to all Americans in the most equitable way that can be reasonably determined. Serve a writ of mandamus to the U.S. Department of Justice. A writ of mandamus is a command to perform according to legally mandated duties. The U.S. Department of Justice has the legal authority to enforce the Constitution as the law of the land and can arrest and prosecute the owners of the Federal Reserve System and any large Wall Street bank principals involved for financial fraud and RICO. Put these bastards in jail, folks. Now, serve a writ of mandamus to the U.S. Provost Marshal. The Provost Marshal has the legal right to arrest and prosecute any senator or U.S. government official or any member of the U.S. military who are engaged in espionage inside America on behalf of a foreign power, in this case Israel. If the U.S. Department of Justice wakes up and agrees to do the job, these prosecutions could be a joint operation. Certainly the two political fixers who call themselves the puppet masters should be arrested for attempting to shake down Ambassador Lee Wanta, who was on my show, for billions of dollars and also threatened his life, all left on Wanta's D.C. Embassy voicemail. Call your members of Congress. Write your members of Congress. These are folks who are supposed to represent you. Be polite, but explain that you have now become aware that Israel did 9/11, there was a nuclear event, and that you want a new investigation and open up, and the perps prosecuted, brother. And that's from Preston James, PhD. He's a social psychologist with a doctorate from major Midwest Big Ten University. Retired after serving their community for over 36 years, during which time there were numerous contacts with those associated with intel and law enforcement. We're telling you the facts. We're giving you the people like Gordon Duff have been over to Africa, they've been to the Middle East, they've been to Israel, and you're getting the best information, and they're going to help us put this out too. I think we're making progress, Russell.
Yeah, Clay, if I get disconnected, it means my phone went out, because it's like I'm getting the beep, but for some reason it didn't charge, and I charged it most of the day. You know, what he has to say sounds nice and nice, but I think writing the congressman is a bunch of nonsense. I would rather see the snipers shoot the congressman, because they're not going to even read the letter. It's just the way it is. You know, you have a history here of peaceful protest and elections, and write your congressman. It's done nothing. Because every congressman, before he became a congressman, was already bought by the Israeli lobby. It's, you got to take it to the streets. I'm sorry. I can't see any other way. You got to go 1776, so to speak.
I think we have to have some kind of backup of government, because most people have been so dumbed down, not just by our public school system, but by the food that you eat, by the water that you drink, by the air that you breathe. I mean, I'm suffering from a stroke here, or something. They can call it Bell's palsy. You know, 10 years ago they would have called it a stroke. Makes it difficult to talk, difficult to eat, difficult to drink, things like that. How did I get that? Was I hit with a electron? Was it from the Wi-Fi? Was it from the electrons around us? We're being poisoned. Your rats won't eat some of this GMO modified corn, and yet they're feeding it to you and your children. So we're being poisoned. This is part of the genocide that's going on, and it's being aimed at you middle class people. I mean, you go to the store and you just buy the whatever you think. You don't read the thing. Well, they don't even tell you it's genetically modified, do they? And when they spray you, Russell, that aluminum is going into your water supply, and that combines with that fluoride, and it becomes even more toxic than it was before. And I tried to tell you what was happening with the chemtrails almost 20 years ago. My films on chemtrails, the video is still selling. Did I lose you, Russell?
No, I'm still here. I'm just listening, but I know I'm going to get disconnected shortly. I hear it because it's beeped in about 8 times already with that beep beep meaning it needs to be charged.
I do my show on my phone, but I keep it plugged in while I'm doing the show. Keep it charging.
Yeah, then I have to talk on speaker because it's a death set. I don't use a cell phone for the reasons you said. I'm not going to be affected by electromagnetic waves. I don't use waves either. I haven't used a cell phone in about 4 years, and I haven't used a microwave in about 4 or 5 years. I'm not going to be poisoned.
I wear a headset. That's why so I don't worry about the microwaves that much.
If everybody out there did something as to what we talked about, one little act, if everyone did so, there'd be a change in this country because it would create tremendous fear in the minds of the elite and also in their police force. The police force has to go. That's not a police force. That's just a janitorial service designed to clean up the mess after one has been raped, robbed, beaten, or murdered. And they do a lot of the murdering themselves.
Well, I don't agree with you on that. I've met a lot, known a lot of good policemen that they're superior. It's like the border patrol.
I have too, but they're all retired now. Now you have a new breed. They hire criminals now. They hire gang members. This is not the police of yesteryear, where you had a lot of good guys. They got rid of those guys. They retired.
Well, they have done that, and they certainly do it, and they are programming the police. They're sending the police over to Israel to be trained by the IDF. They plan on turning us into Palestinians. But the police, some of the sheriffs are standing up. The police that I knew, they never bothered me in Arizona or New Mexico.
Well, the sheriff has nothing to do with the police. The sheriff is a separate organization. The sheriff is the only legitimate constitutional law enforcement agent in the United States.
Then you have to work with the sheriff. You have to work with the sheriff, and you have to become part of his posse. Sheriff Arpaio did a good job.
I agree with you on that. That's why I accentuate the fact that the sheriff is not the police. The police don't even like the sheriffs.
You have
Because
to
they know
re-educate the police, Russell. The thing is, I don't want to tear down any of these organizations. I don't want to tear down AT&T. I'm talking to you on AT&T right now. They may be part of the New World Order because they're financing it or they're backing it, but that can all be turned around. All of the assets that these, including the movie theaters, all these assets that these banksters have funded and co-opted, that can be taken from them. No statute of limitations on fraud. Of course, the courts aren't going to do it because the courts are controlled by Britain. They got the Bar Association has an office probably right next door to the Rothschilds' banking operations. But people all around the world are starting to wake up to this usury that these criminals are using. And we have to put the right people in jail. And somebody, Rhonda Rochelle, says Benjamin Friedman goes further. He says Jew is a mistranslation of Judea. He goes into great details in his article, Facts Are Facts, which pretty much agrees on the Khazars. All right. We lost a Russell, but that's okay, folks. I'm going to cut it short. I've got another show to do tomorrow. I'm not broadcasting on anything. All I'm doing is this show and the YouTube video. You'll probably see it on YouTube. Thank you for listening. Go to freeamerican.com or shop.freeamerican.com. Get some of the magazines, get some of the books, make a donation. God bless you.